Everybody, before we get rolling, some of you may have heard, we welcomed, Bret welcomed into the world, new baby Camille Grace at 3:51 Sunday morning. So she came a little early, but according to his accounts and everybody else, everybody's doing great. I'm sure she was born angry like her father. Into the world and running, so very excited for Bret and Grace, and started their new journey together. So pretty awesome. In recognition of some things from the Eastern Illinois game, the next day we recognized several guys as MVPs on offense. We did Pat Bryant, Josh Kreutz, Caden Fagan, Luke Altmaier, and Tanner Arkin, kind of a guy at every position, just played pretty good football. Obviously a lot of production, a lot of different things, but it wasn't just strictly touchdowns and catches. It was a lot of nitty-gritty work, especially epitomized by Josh Kreutz, who I think is kind of the catapult of our, not only just offensively, but our entire football team. Just the way he plays, the way he conducts himself, the way he plays with an edge, I think is pretty impressive. Two defensive look guys going against our offense really did a great week. We moved Demetrius John. DD we moved actually during fall camp to the outside backer world, and has done a really nice job growing and developing in that position. And Grayson Griffin, who's been with us a couple of years, actually played in the game on some special teams, is a very fun player to be around and contagious personality. Defensive MVPs, Dylan Rosiak, Matt Bailey, Miles Scott, and T. Cox all got recognition, and our offensive look team players, Aaron Ball and Sam Segalis on the offensive line. Those guys did a good job of kind of emulating Kansas. And then special teams MVP was Luke Zarzan, who's another guy that just continues to show up. Just last year kind of worked his way when we started fall camp, was a guy on the look team that was providing looks against our special teams unit, and guys were just making reference to the way he played throughout fall camp, and then in the fall season, when because of some injuries worked him in and was one of our better special teams player a year ago, and now was our special teams MVP in his opener. Not only did a great job of role playing, but when we did have the one mishap with a fumbled punt, he was there to recover it, kind of Johnny on the spot, really impressive. And our special teams look guy, TJ Griffin. So just a lot of really good things in retrospect. I talked after the game about 8 new starters, a number of guys getting their first opportunities, but had 11 guys catch balls, which is a really high number. All of those were from Luke except for one. Goda got one from Donovan at the end. To get Donovan that work on the back end was really, really good. Just a lot of really, in my opinion, some opportunities to do things in the fourth quarter especially. I really wanted to go into that game, and we obviously, like every game, expect to have success. You just don't know how sometimes those are going to play out, and I think the way that game got away from us, I told our coaches at halftime, hey, stay with our starters. Let's get through. I wanted to prepare for a second half game, right? And don't get that many opportunities during fall camp anymore. The rules have changed now where we only get 2 fall scrimmages to kind of work our guys, and obviously that isn't against other competitions. So to take it full advantage of that Eastern Illinois game, told our coaches to stay with the lineups through the third quarter, and we'll kind of, at the end of the third, depending how things play out, we'll phase some guys out. But we were able to get a number of guys in and play almost the entire fourth quarter. I always love to get guys more reps, but I thought overall that was a really big opportunity for us. A couple house cleaning items before we jump in. Our guys are involved. Again, a couple guys getting some national recognition for their community service outside of football. On Wednesday afternoon, our guys are going to, my wife and I partnered with a pretty big group of our players that took the initiative to have their own internal drive to raise some cash and opportunities. I bought 150 backpacks, and those will be distributed to a number of schools throughout the community on Wednesday. Basically all the players, almost every player in our program contributed and raised that pool of money up pretty high, because I vowed that I would match it. So that was me taking advantage of as well. So we were able to give our guys 150 backpacks and some gift cards inside that I know will be provided to the community. And those guys were tenfold excited and opportunity to be a part of that. So you'll see a little bit more of that. That'll get some social media coverage on Wednesday afternoon. And other than that, we started school. I always worry that first week of school for me as a football coach, there's just so many moving dynamics. You got kids today in the world they're living in that deal with a lot of issues that I think are unprecedented, from social media to even in the academic world now. The classes have been a little bit more restricted, so to find classes that work with our guys, there's never class conflicts at the University of Illinois, because football always yields to the academic world. So to kind of find a way to get all of our guys at practice at one time universally is a little bit of work in progress. And then last week, because it was a Thursday game, we practiced on a Monday. we never practiced on a Monday, but it was also the first Monday of school, so there was just all these moving parts. I thought our guys handled that and channeled it, and then to get ready to play a Thursday night game, every other person on the week, it's Thursday for us. It was game night. It was a Saturday night. We kind of started on the Friday before. That was our first Sunday, and we worked our way through the week. Obviously, we'll have one coming up against Nebraska. That's a Friday night game again, so that was a little bit different because it's a road game. So thought our guys just handled and methodically worked our way through that to get where we are. So Kansas is obviously a very talented football team. Top 20 ranking for a reason. People talking about them being a playoff team, and you can definitely see that. Before they even played a snap this year, they're very well coached, very dynamic players, offensively, defensively. Like us, they lost some players to the NFL, but have replaced them and also continue to build the roster that they already currently had. I think their football team and program really channels through their quarterback when he's been able to be in the lineup. They obviously have a record that is pretty special. He's been the two previous seasons shortened a little bit because of injury, right? But was full go healthy for us a year ago and really drives their team. Not just, I think, just the way he plays, but he embodies them. Obviously, Lance, since he's gotten there, has instilled a personality and demeanor, not just in the players, but also in the program. And they're going through major renovation in their stadium, so that put the game against Lindenwood, obviously not in their home stadium, but it was for a home game for all practical purposes, and they played extremely well, especially through the first half. They kept their starters in there and saw some new faces emerge and do some good things, but also a lot of the players from the latter part. So excited about this opportunity to have a ranked team come in here to Memorial Stadium. I know our crowd is expected to be a good number. I think we're within 1,000 or so of being sold out for that game, and putting ourselves in a position to have a crowd that, unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, fortunately for us, we're trying to build this thing up and get it to be more consistent. I think Saturday night hopefully is going to be a microcosm of that, and I think our guys will be excited to play against, this is our first rematch game against 6 teams that will be a rematch on our schedule. Last year, those 6 teams, we went 1-5, so to have those 6 teams play out on our schedule, this is week 1 of that. I think is a pretty unique opportunity. It's something we'll build on, especially internally for us to move forward. So excited about that. Open up for questions. Injury-wise, came out of it fairly clean. The only guy that was T-strain did not play in the game. That was kind of not a choice. So we just thought it was smarter to keep him and reserve him. So he's full cleared for practice tomorrow. So depending on how the week plays out, should have him involved in the game plan. And really, other than that, everybody came out of it pretty clean from everybody that played in the game to play this coming Saturday.
You mentioned rematch game. Your history, would you say you'd rather be the team that lost last game or won the last game? It doesn't matter.
I don't. The part that I actually, we used to do this a little bit before I went to the league, but in the league, what you really began to understand is sometimes you play the same team twice in the same season, right? And those rematches become very, very gamesmanship, and I think there's probably a little testament to that. But in college football, where you don't have rematch games except for championship games, my first 2 years of the Big Ten championship game, both games were rematch games. We played Michigan State and Nebraska in both of those 2 seasons, losing one earlier and winning one later. But for this, I think it's just kind of where it is. I always try to divide our schedule up into having each game have something of significance. Eastern Illinois really sold the value of this. Was an 8-3 team that was on the verge of playoffs. It was highly ranked in their division. Needed to have our respect. I think our guys honed in and focused on that, and I think against Kansas, we recognize the ability that they have, and last year's game is definitely a factor in it because they saw how we played, and we definitely saw how they played, and now to come into it, kind of both similar games, right? Lindenwood and Eastern Illinois. Lindenwood's, I believe, in year 3 of their program, but obviously Kansas overwhelmed them early and often, and it kind of played out the same way.
Brett, talking about those rematches, I know what stood out about last year for you. I mean, Aaron talked about how that opened his eyes as a coordinator. Like, as a staff, like, what stood out about that matchup last year?
Well, first, I've been at Kansas State for 2 years, and in that time played KU at KU. That was the last time I was there, and it just made immediately when you drove into that scene that night, like I knew. When they asked us to move to a Friday night, I wasn't really a big fan of it, but the powers that be got involved, and we moved, and I knew that was kind of playing into their hands. They were going to hype it up and sell it, and saw a very active, loud crowd, and obviously they jumped on us And I did like the way our guys responded. Obviously, we didn't come out on top, but there was some fight, some resiliency. And you know, last year, what I think happened in front of us was there was a bunch of guys that expected to have success like they had in the year prior, right? And it didn't come so easily. So I think that was a good awakening. You know, Aaron, I can see that as a coordinator. That was the first live environment I mean, obviously Toledo was here and they were a good football team, but it was here in our stadium and had success. So to go through that, and they definitely attacked us in certain ways that were game plan, scheme oriented. And I think to have that awakening as a coordinator is a big time learning moment.
Brett, you mentioned it on Thursday night, but what specifically does having a skill set diversity in your running back room allow you guys to do? So
Yeah, well, twofold. You know, we started with Aiden Lawfrey because we thought during fall camp he was a guy that had, a lot of consistency, big play, breakaway mentality. I really kind of thought I had said earlier in the week if there was going to be a bingo card on Aiden Lawfrey as starting tailback and Mac Resetich as our starting returner, two kind of Central Illinois kids that probably I think when their career is wrapping up here that people will say these were two very under-recruited, valued recruits coming out of high school that are going to be really good players and potentially NFL type guys. And Mac was probably a hair of a chin away from breaking that first one. I think a punter got him, which we've definitely beat him up on. And on the flip side, Aiden, he was really down to one guy that got him there on that first play to win 9. But I just think Aiden brings a skill set that's kind of unique to that room. I would say Caden is the typical what you guys see is what you get, right? And how it plays out. I do think he has an exceptional burst, right? That toss crack that went on a big play there out of his first big run was really kind of vintage Caden in my opinion. And Josh, unfortunately, because the way it kind of played out, we were getting ready to roll him in there quite a bit in the fourth quarter, but then I also didn't want to put him in there when we had a backup line in there. I wanted those other running backs. Jordan hadn't gotten a lot of reps. I wanted to see what Khalil could do. So Josh probably didn't get to showcase his abilities, but I think he will in the future. So I think Josh is kind of a hybrid of the two. And then Jordan Anderson is probably another typical big bruiser type back, but I'd tell you Khalil Valentine is a special player. He's got a lot of different values. Nothing really gets big for him. Now he looks like a 10th grader in there. Like he without his, he's kind of got that smile and that grin, just kind of a demeanor, but he is a very focused, very serious, very determined young man, and I think he'll help us this fall.
you mentioned after Thursday's game that there wasn't much you could say in the moment you look back and say, wish we hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Did you nitpick it a little more over the weekend?
Oh, well, I think as coaches for sure, right? Like what I was referencing to there was just like, calls, situational football. We had an end of half series, but it wasn't end of half pressure. Like last night, one of the biggest changes for me this weekend, I'm sure you guys went through it, is I had to cheer for USC, Oregon, and all these other teams that you're like, oh my gosh, they're in the Big Ten, right? So to see USC have success last night and over the course of the weekend to watch those other teams, but I thought that drive at the end of half for USC last night was like, that was the signature mark of a really poised quarterback and a play caller that knew what they were doing in that moment. And until you have that moment, you can't really show it, right? But that's even though we were able to have an end of half drive in the Eastern Illinois game, it wasn't maybe probably to the extent of what we're probably going to see possibly this weekend or in the future. So to have the value of the game being in stress and in check, that part is a part that you got to try to prepare him for more than anything.
Demetrius Hill, I don't think he was dressed.
I don't know if Demetrius dressed now. We have about 109. Well, I know we got a 119 man roster, and if there was anybody that was limited from 10 days out, right, from then those guys didn't, and they weren't in the 2 deep or travel roster, then they didn't dress. Just to try and condense the locker room a little bit. If we dress all 120, it gets to be a little crazy. So I don't think he was dressed because there were 2 days during the final week of preparation where he wasn't cleared for full practice. So that was there. But other than that, but he really wasn't in the playing rotation as it stood.
And Joe Barnett, a guy like we talked about Gabe,
Yeah.
obviously and his versatility, but how much does maybe Joe's emergence allow us some versatility?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of true freshmen that Khalil Valentine on offense being one for sure. Tanner Heckel on defense, even though his was a little bit lesser role, and then Joe Barner was another guy for me specifically that I was really excited to see him show up. He has been very impressive going back to last spring, even during recruiting. Like I started watching his film, I remember when we first offered him, I was just like, this kid's got something, he's got a knack, and then you meet him personality-wise, he's kind of kind of probably a little Eddie Haskell-ish, if everybody knows Leave It to Beaver, right? Like just kind of says all the things, does all the right things, but you always got your eye on him. You know, he's kind of one of those guys. But that's kind of how he plays, right? He just shows up. He makes a lot of really good, smart football plays. He's extremely strong, very athletic. I thought kind of what we saw on Saturday is kind of what we've seen in practice, and I'm excited to see him continue to grow, because I think as we get into our packages, he could have a value there that's pretty good.
Brett,
I should say, actually, Daniel Brown would be another guy. He'd not play Saturday. He was set to play, had a soft tissue issue, and don't know if we'll have him back this week, but expect him to have him back at some point here in the near future.
believe it or not, I actually wanted to ask you about Luke Zardzen, because
Yeah.
he showed up
Yeah.
at every level of special teams.
Yeah.
What's having a guy like that come through your program? And
You know, he's probably the poster child for, we always say, TSD edge, right? Tough, smart, dependable. You know, Luke's probably not going to go out there and win a 40-yard dash or the vertical jump competition, but he just shows up. Very blue-collar, lunch pail mentality. I always say volume reflects confidence, right? And so we have we always call it, you know, so instead of AGT, America Got Talent, we have IGT, Illinois Got Talent, and he got up his freshman year and delivered a zinger at Jake Hansen, right? Like, who was the biggest type A mentality in that whole building. And I'm like sitting there, I didn't know that there was kind of a good relationship there. Now he got a little bit of street cred because he came from Palchos High School, so I think, when a big Polish guy talks on your behalf, people are gonna listen. But like, he just right there, like he said, I probably watched 20 plays of him in high school football, right? Like, they want him as a preferred walk-on. I'm like, hell yeah, this kid's a good mix-it-up guy. But I remember walking out of that meeting, and I said, hey, I don't know, but I'm going to take a big bet on that kid being a player, right? Just because kids kind of present this thing that, like, you can see it carry forward, and that's exactly what. And then Dish, I think Dish was a great example. Dish didn't know him from Adam, came in, didn't know what he was, who he was, put him on look teams against the guys, and then he, like, was literally one of the guys that came to me. He's like, hey, coach, like, Brett, like, we probably should give this guy an opportunity. And he's literally kind of almost an irreplaceable guy right now. So that, and his mom and dad own a Dairy Queen, which makes him live as live gets. So that's pretty good.
With tight end depth running so thin, how
Yeah.
important was it to get Tanner in the end zone on week one?
Yeah, I get the question, but Tanner probably from where we were a year ago, even like when we were sitting down, I know he's doing Tuesday interviews with you guys, right? Like, in this game a year ago, he was involved in the plan but didn't play a lot, and just his physical development. And then Tanner got up and was voted captain, and ironically, before that ever happened, we had we played a little game in a room called I Respect, and so I had a night designated where I started off and I described someone and why I respect them, and then that person delivers that message to someone else, and then you go around the room, and someone delivered the message to B. Bell, who's our offensive line graduate assistant, who, if you haven't met him yet, you'll know when you meet him. He's just got an incredible presence, and he's big as a house, and got a great voice, and his person that he relayed that I respect to went to Tanner Arkin. So here's an O-line GA that played in the NFL, and he said some words on behalf of what he had learned and witnessed of Tanner Arkin, that the whole room was just shaking their head. And then I kind of knew that Tanner's voice in that room had grown quite a bit, and then to see him voted captain was pretty impressive. And I think those are probably some of the storylines within the tight end room. But, like on Saturday, I didn't even realize when it happened. I didn't realize what happened when Caden had his touchdown and then turned around and covered a kickoff and knocked that guy in the next week, right? Like that reminds you. So like the first time, when I had great running backs at Wisconsin, they may have played some special teams, but they didn't play a lot, right? Like they kind of just, we factor in that. And then I go to the SEC, and then I'm playing against LSU, Alabama, whoever, and you got a tailback that's running for a touchdown or an early down run, and then you're also trying to block him on punt, right? And you're trying to block him on punt return, and so that's kind of the transition I've made here is, Caden Fagan, pound for pound, like I was doing I did a research the other day on our entire 120-man roster, who has the highest one-step vertical jump, right? So one step means you don't have to stand flat-footed, you get one step into it, and then, so it's a combination of height, length, size, and power, right? And the highest number in our entire football program was 138 inches with Caden Fagan, right? Which makes sense because he's long and very fast and very powerful. The value that he brings us beyond just running back are things that we're capitalizing on. I think that could be a difference maker for us this year. And Tanner Arkin, he loves playing tight end, But if I took him off my right shield on punt, because I run that, that's my depth, that's my coaching responsibility. If I take him off that, he'll literally be waiting to fight me, right? Because he does not want to come off that role. So just a great example of the way our guys think right now.
Different type of quarterback to
Yeah.
prepare for this week. What are some challenges against a dual threat guy? How's that kind of impact preparation?
Yeah, he's an incredibly talented player that has a very accurate ball. He gets rid of the ball very quickly on early downs. He's under 2.5 seconds, which on early downs to get the ball out that fast means that he's got a concise plan, he's got a great direction, he's got great accuracy. His completion percentage on early downs, that number even gets lower, right? So like he gets rid of the ball very efficiently. In the run game, they do so many things dynamically that they trade motion, shift, and movement all the time, right? So they're putting people in different positions, a lot of window dressing, which obviously increases him. But he is a running quarterback, and so I think for us, we talk a lot about the way we got to play the game, and he's a quarterback that we need to treat as a running back, right? We need to play with a certain intensity and value to that. Respect what he can do on the through game. They probably have three. Well, more than that, but their starting 3 wide receivers are all very gifted, dynamic. He went deep on them the other day, as he tried to do in our game. They got some tight ends that can mix it up. Their running backs, 9 and 4, are very, very talented players. So I think 6 is the main piece, but he's got a lot of nice accessories that they use well.
Coach, you mentioned the Big Ten teams, the new teams, the teams you're going to play with 8-1, be able to check them out some or not much.
Well, I literally watched the last minute and 48 seconds of the game last night. So I was in my office. I'd met with Aaron specifically on some defense things. I came into my office and somebody shot me a text that so I have a couple group messages going to their players. My quarterbacks probably hate me because I usually hit them up when I see it, like when Tommy DeVito had an end of drive game the other day. I kind of hit him all up and say, hey, Tommy's got an end of drive, and then he slid short on a hook slide, which I beat him up on, right, with our, and these guys, I forget, people don't think like I think, so it'll be like 11:30 at night, and I'll be texting them like it's 7 at night or something, or 4:30 or 5 in the morning. I'm like, oh shit, I shouldn't do that, right? But it was funny because I turned it on and I saw LSU. They must have been penalized for motion and movement or something like that, and so I saw them kick the field goal, and then knew that USC had one timeout, and I just think that kid orchestrated it. And so I can't tell you I was sitting there cheering, right? But I'm like, okay, if USC wins, this is a good thing. You've gotten to know these guys a little bit. I met Lincoln several times before this year, but especially Dan Lanning. He's a guy I spent a week with in Hawaii on the Nike trip, so I kind of like him and his wife are cool people, so I like to cheer for them on Saturday. And then I did watch UCLA Hawaii game, so you were again drawn into that moment as it was. I didn't get a chance to watch Arizona, but I know Jed probably better than all 4 of those other guys or other 3 guys. So yeah, it's just a different world, man. It's like anything that helps the Big Ten. I think it's a positive thing. People could never understand that. Like, as long as I've been a head coach, I really hope every Big Ten team wins every game, other than the one we play in, right? Because it just helps all of us in general, and hopefully that's something that plays out for all of us.
Anything else for Coach? Last one. You've mentioned before in camp, and I talked to some players after the game that they've seen Luke Altmaier just be different. Whether it's mentality, whether it's emotion, whatever it is, he just feels different this year. As a coach, what's it like to kind of witness somebody kind of grow and develop like that?
Again, just his personality. Luke's got a really good sense of humor, just a little dry and doesn't let it show all the time. I saw last week in his presentation, we do a small group meeting where it's just me and the quarterbacks, and to hear his voice in that meeting, I thought was awesome. One of the things I like to do, I know you guys don't think I asked Bret to give me a summary after the game of what our guys say. I really don't care about the articles, don't take offense, but I like reading what our guys say, because when they say things about either our opponents or our players, I want to know what that is, right? And there was a number of our players. We always say speak for yourself, right? But like when you're talking about your opponent, or talking about a teammate, don't write a check they can't catch. I don't want to hear about, hey, this guy's going to have 50 catches or this guy's going to run for this. But if you can talk about him in a way like, hey, this is what I saw at practice, this is what he did in the game. And there was a little good exchange. I don't know who was asking a question, but somebody asked Luke about Pat, and they asked Pat about Luke. And Pat's comments were very specific about what he saw, right? His diligence and his directness and building relationships and saying certain things at practice, and that's been very evident to me as a head coach. And then we were watching, well, there were Saturday games, and I use media examples from our guys, but I also use a lot of media examples from guys that we play against that are good or bad, right? And I happened to show one to the team that was a media example that probably wasn't what you want, and it kind of didn't play out the way that that person had hoped. And Luke sent me a text, I don't know what time it was, late Saturday night, and said he made reference to that, like, so it told me he was listening to it. Because I think quarterbacks, I say this all the time, are very like head coaches, right? That we probably get way too much credit when it goes well and way too much blame when it doesn't. Now, as a head coach, I get paid a lot of money to take that blame, which is great, right? Like, that's what I sign up for, this is my job. But I always feel like quarterbacks don't really get the fair end of the stick, because a lot of times when things don't go well, it's not all their fault, right? And they get the blame a lot of times for it. So I've always tried to protect guys from that moment. But yeah, it's fun to watch them grow. Really fun. You want one more?
Yeah, I was just curious about Melvin Priestley. Like, he had a couple plays. He had a couple
Melvin.
plays at right tackle that were kind of wild plays for someone moving like he does.
Yeah.
What did you see from him? In
Yeah,
that
Melvin.
game action?
I was very, both those tackle spots, I thought both would play well, but in particular Melvin, just because I've been so proud of that kid for all that he's done. And not just, it's easy to see he could play the game. I think I told a story when I watched this film, like he played against LSU, and I'm like, this guy played better than 5 other SEC tackles that I just watched the same day. But he just has a demeanor. I think Bart would tell you, I think the O-line would tell you, he has probably changed the culture and environment in that O-line room to an edge of, Josh is the unified, unprecedented league, but I saw early on the respect that Josh gave Melvin, right? Like, kind of completely two different people, well houses, warehouses, whatever you want to say. But Melvin, like, man, that kept, like, I know what he's getting in the NIL world, right? So I was like, when he has a new shirt on, new something, I always give him a little bit of heat. I'm like, man, you got more new clothes than anybody, right? Like, and he just smiles ear to ear. The kid passed 18 hours over a 2.7 GPA for a guy knowing what I know he came in under, and coming from East St. Louis and the direction that he had then, and then he passed 6 more hours in the summer and literally had unprecedented issues. The way he's kind of changed his body, his demeanor, his work habits it's just literally just so fun to see his growth, and then to see him have a little bit of success. I'm sure everybody saw the toss play where he sent that guy in the next Tuesday, right? Like, I just like to see him have a little, but it's going to escalate in a hurry. And I've had talks with him, right? Like, you got to play within yourself. People are going to, because as it ratchets up, he ratchets up, right? So like, he's got to play within himself. But I think you're just scratching the surface what those two guys are.